Most people imagine the Sahara as an endless sea of sand, but beyond the famous dunes are ancient caravan routes, hidden oases, forgotten villages, and landscapes so vast they make even mountains feel small. And most travelers never experience that side of the desert, because the Sahara most people picture and the Sahara that actually exists are two very different things. What people think the Sahara is. When people think of the Sahara, they usually picture one thing: sand. Endless dunes stretching to the horizon. Camels crossing empty landscapes. And to be fair, those images are real. The Sahara is the largest hot desert on Earth. It stretches across multiple countries, covering parts of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Sudan, and covers an area larger than the United States. But the Sahara isn't simply a desert. It's mountains, rock formations, ancient settlements, salt flats that mirror the sky, river valleys carved by water that disappeared thousands of years ago, and landscapes that constantly change from one region to the next. The deeper you travel into it, the more surprising it becomes, and the more clearly you understand that the postcard image of the Sahara barely scratches the surface of what the desert actually is. The dunes everyone comes to see. For many travelers, the Sahara begins with the dunes, towering walls of sand shaped entirely by the wind over thousands of years. Some rise hundreds of feet above the desert floor. Erg Chebi in Morocco, the Uberi Sand Sea in Libya, the Grand Erg Oriental stretching across Algeria and Tunisia. Each one a different character. Each one shaped by its own climate and wind patterns. The colors constantly change: orange, gold, red. And at sunrise and sunset, the landscape seems almost unreal, as if the desert is performing for the few people willing to wake early enough to witness it. It's easy to understand why people travel thousands of miles to experience it. The silence above a dune ridge at dawn, the warmth radiating from the sand, the way footprints trail behind you as if recording proof that you were actually there. But these famous dunes represent only a small part of the Sahara itself. In fact, sand dunes cover less than a quarter of the entire desert. The rest is something else entirely. The rocky desert few expect. What surprises many visitors is that much of the Sahara isn't covered by sand. Large areas consist of rocky plains, mountains, and vast plateaus known as hamadas and regs, where wind has stripped the surface down to bare stone over millennia. Ancient geological formations rise from the landscape in shapes that seem impossible. Canyons cut through stone in colors that shift between deep red, brown, and pale yellow depending on the light. And entire mountain ranges emerge from the desert, including the Hoggar Mountains in Algeria and the Tibesti Range in Chad, both reaching heights that receive occasional snowfall in winter. This is a side of the Sahara that rarely appears in photographs. It doesn't fit the postcard, but it reveals just how diverse the desert truly is, and how much of it remains beyond the reach of most travelers who spend only a night or two in a camp near the dunes. Life in the desert. For thousands of years, people have adapted to life in the Sahara. Nomadic communities like the Tuareg and the Berbers learned to travel enormous distances across difficult landscapes, reading stars for navigation and wind for weather. Trade routes connected cities across Africa, carrying salt, gold, ivory, and cloth through the desert for centuries before modern roads existed. Timbuktu, once considered one of the world's great centers of Islamic scholarship, sat at the edge of the Sahara and thrived precisely because of the desert trade that passed through it. And these communities remain deeply connected to the land. This human story is often overlooked by travelers focused entirely on the landscape, but it is one of the Sahara's most fascinating and humbling aspects. Most visitors leave the Sahara thinking they've seen the desert, but the deeper you go, the more it changes. The desert you arrive expecting and the desert you actually experience are rarely the same thing. If you enjoy discovering destinations beyond the obvious, this channel is built for that. Hidden oases. One of the Sahara's greatest surprises is water. Scattered throughout the desert are oases, places where ancient underground aquifers bring water to the surface in environments that should, by all appearances, be completely hostile to life. Palm trees appear. Villages emerge. Date palms, fruit trees, and small gardens grow in the middle of landscapes where nothing else survives. And life becomes possible in ways that feel almost miraculous against the backdrop of the surrounding desert. And even today, they remain among the most remarkable landscapes in the Sahara. Standing at the edge of an oasis, surrounded by sand on every side, it's impossible not to feel the significance of water in a way that is difficult to access anywhere else on Earth. The night sky. When the sun disappears, the Sahara changes completely. Temperatures fall dramatically, sometimes by 30 degrees or more in a matter of hours. The wind quiets. The sand, which absorbed heat all day, begins to release it slowly, and the desert takes on a warmth that feels entirely different from the intensity of midday. Planets appear bright enough to cast faint shadows, and the silence becomes almost overwhelming. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of a landscape so vast that sound itself seems to dissipate before it can travel. For many travelers, this becomes the most unforgettable part of the desert. Not the dunes, not the camels, but the night. The scale of the Sahara. It's difficult to understand the size of the Sahara until you experience it. Maps show the numbers. 9 million square kilometers. 11 countries. Distances measured in days of travel rather than hours. But numbers don't prepare you for the experience of standing in a landscape where the horizon is the same in every direction, where a mountain range visible in the distance might still be a full day's drive away, where the silence is so complete that your own heartbeat becomes audible. The horizon seems endless. Distances become difficult to judge in ways that disorient even experienced travelers. And human presence feels incredibly small, not in a frightening way but in a clarifying one. The scale changes your perspective. It strips away the feeling that the world revolves around wherever you happen to live, because very few places on Earth still feel this vast, and this empty, and this indifferent to human concerns in a way that is, paradoxically, deeply comforting. Why travelers are seeking the desert. Many travelers come to the Sahara searching for adventure, but they often leave with something else. Silence, space, the opportunity to slow down without guilt, to sit with nothing happening and find that nothing happening is, in fact, something, and simply observe the way light moves across sand, the way wine shifts the surface, the way stars rotate above the dunes throughout the night as if the sky itself is moving. These are experiences that require no activity, no planning, and no particular skill. Only the willingness to be present in a landscape that rewards patience above everything else. Who this side of the Sahara is for. This side of the Sahara is for travelers who enjoy simplicity. For people who don't need constant activity to feel that a journey was worthwhile. For those who appreciate silence as an experience in itself, not as an absence of something better. And who understand that some of the world's greatest experiences come from doing very little in a very extraordinary place. Sometimes the landscape is enough. Sometimes watching the color of the sand change over the course of a single hour is more than enough. And sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do in a new place is simply stop and let it be exactly what it is. The Sahara isn't simply a sea of sand. It's ancient trade routes, hidden oases, desert communities, mountain landscapes, rocky plateaus, and some of the quietest places left on Earth. It's a living record of human endurance and adaptation stretching back thousands of years. And once you move beyond the obvious image of the desert, you realize how much more there is. How much history, how much silence, how much sky, and how much space still exists in a world that increasingly has less and less of all of it. Subscribe for more journeys beyond the tourist version. If you could spend one night in the Sahara, what would you want to experience most? The dunes, the stars, or the silence?